you'll join us next season for our exciting 50th anniversary. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Oliver Butler, Director of What the Constitution Means to Us.
So I got a pretty loud voice out of the way. Do you like this?
Yeah.
You like this?
They're the same.
Okay, we'll do the mic. One, I want to thank you all for coming to see the show. I was told you're the Berkeley High Council here. I'm not from Berkeley, but I love coming out here, and you've been an amazing city to be in, and I've done a lot of walking. Maybe like the most beautiful smelling city from New York, so I'm always struck by that, but the city smells great, so I just want to say thank you for that. I am the director of What the Constitution Means to Me. I should say that I'm sort of afraid of giving away too much, but also by saying that I realize I set some expectation of like great surprises, so I sort of ruin things that way. But I'm going to share more with you than I would normally with someone, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope it sort of adds value to the piece. I am a theater director. I have a theater company in New York called the Debate Society. I make ensemble plays with that company. And I also work with playwrights on new plays. Heidi came to me over a year ago and asked me to work on this show. It really wasn't a show yet when she came and found me. She told me the story of what it was, and basically she put herself through, you'll hear about a lot of this in the show, so again, sorry for some spoilers, but she put herself through college doing speeches on the Constitution at American Legion Hall. And so about 10 years ago, she started wondering, what those speeches that she did might tell her about the way the world is today. So she started doing sort of these impromptu speeches, trying to recreate them. And so when she came to me to talk about sort of developing this into a full-length piece, she had sort of a few of these stories, an idea of what she wanted to make, and sort of not an idea of exactly how it was going to wrap up into a show. So we spent around 4 to 5 months taking these like stories and putting them together into this piece. And what she ends up doing is she tells the story of 4 generations of women in her family and how the Constitution did and did not provide rights to them over the course of their existence in America, starting with her great-great-grandmother, who was a mail-order bride from Germany. So what we ended up finding is trying to find these stories of these women, largely centered around the domestic violence. That she is one of the few women in her family to grow up in a home free from domestic violence. So she started asking these like really important questions about like why was that? What actually made the difference between someone who felt like they had the agency to ask for help in their lives and someone who didn't, or someone who actually asked for help and actually had police possibly show up and protect them, and just sort of understand sort of what was actually afoot in what rights are. And so this sounds sort of, I'm sure, I know it's important, it sounds like it might be like wonky and law-y, and it is, but it's also just this really important family story about sort of how you go from how a family starts in one place and ends in another. Now, me as a director, I don't know if anyone here like has an idea of what directors do. Is any directors in the room? Anybody? Yeah. It's sort of a weird job. I think I teach directing as well, and you think that part of it is you're supposed to have all the answers. And the answer is, and the truth is you actually don't. I've recently sort of thought about directing as something where you're actually creating space for people to be vulnerable. And you create space by setting some sort of boundaries, usually like mutually agreed upon, for people to feel safe and free within. So the process of making this play had everything to do with creating a maximum amount of agency for Heidi to work in. So giving her as much choice in the actual building of the piece and also how the piece is executed on stage. So we have rehearsed it. It is a thing, there is a script. But Heidi also has complete freedom to do whatever she wants up there. So that doesn't mean that it's a total free-for-all. Like even great improvisation, it's like highly rehearsed and prepared, but we built into the actual structure of the piece the ability for her to take advantage of doing whatever she wants to say what she wants, and even adapt the show based on like things that happen in the world, day to day, as a way to give her maximum agency. The other thing I'll say, just something that because I feel super lucky to be in proximity to this piece, it really has been, more than any other show I've worked on, sort of a job of service. I sort of serve the show, I serve her, and I serve the other actors in the piece. I've been really interested in just like, what are the nature of rights? You know, one thing that we've sort of come up against is this idea of like, we talk about rights as something that exists, but the more that we've sort of talked about it in the show and like worked on it, I've realized there's sort of like these amorphous things. And the thing I've come to, I don't know if it's true or not, the thing I've come to is that three things have to exist for a right to exist. One is that a person needs to know they have the right. Two, it has to be written down somewhere in law. And three, the enforcers, the police, the people who protect those rights have to actually show up and protect them. And what you'll see in the story of the piece is that if any one of those things is missing, you don't actually have that right. We talked to a legal scholar who said it's even worse than that, in that there are some things where you can't even bring a case, like on the legal level, you can't even bring a case because of the way the legal system works to actually protect the right if it has been infringed. So I've just been sort of, if there is any mystery around like the world of like how law works and what rights are and like what rights we actually have, it's there. The other thing I'll say is Heidi debates, this is also sort of a little bit of a spoiler, but there are two local debaters who've been working with us here. In New York, we worked with a New York a young teenage debater, and Heidi debates one of them. You'll see one of them tonight. A sort of existential question of America. So in a whole section of this, you're going to watch a local talent go head to head, child versus adult, with an existential debate that you will see live on stage, which has also been this sort of fascinating experience of getting to know sort of the next generation and sort of there are a whole group of young people doing debate who have these like incredible skills to actually find solutions where there were no solutions before and parse arguments that you might not even agree with. So I've also been really lucky to sort of stand by and learn about just like how we possibly solve problems that we don't have answers to. So that's another thing you can look forward to. Have I been talking for like 400 hours? Maybe. How much time has it been?
No, keep going.
Keep going. Well, I want to give you a chance to ask some questions. You can ask me anything. I'm super happy to have you here. It is, I love this play. I really do. I should, but I do. It's not your normal kind of play, and we sort of tell you everything you need to know as you watch it. Yeah, I want you to enjoy it, and I think it's potentially meaningful for our time right now. And anyway, if you have any questions for me, please ask, or I'll open it up, and then if no one has any questions, I'll like just start talking. We filmed the one in New York mainly just as like an archival footage. Here, I don't know, Peter, do you film the show?
Just for archival purposes.
Archival purposes. We're taking it to New York. This show will go to New York Theater Workshop in the fall, right before the election. So we're also using it as this opportunity to sort of amplify the work of other organizers and people running for office. And you know, I sort of had this dream. We haven't fully figured out how to do it, but like, if you know, over the course of previews, we'll probably figure it out. Like if, you know, there are people running for student council or running for office, you know, at all levels of government, I'd sort of love to like shout them out as a part of the, you know, curtain call or something. Anyway, so we're trying to find ways to like, you know, amplify. I do have an idea for how this translates into either a film or like sort of like an audio documentary, but we can talk about that some other time. Yeah, what's your question?
I teach students who go to these contests. I go with them.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm thinking this would be wonderful for a classroom, my classroom, Canadian classroom, the social studies classroom, to see this.
We would love it. You should please reach out. I know there's definitely like discount tickets for, I don't know, there's discount tickets, I'm sure discounts for students. The debaters who are in the show, they're bringing their own groups here. So I think there's even going to be like debate nights as well. Like, I mean, my dream is sort of model UN style. We've got like the debate groups of all of, you know, Berkeley and San Francisco in the audience. But I mean, those are just my like big dreams. But I would love, please, you know, propose those ideas to us. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned your job involving setting boundaries and creating space. Would you be willing to say something about the kind of boundaries that you've found useful to set from?
Sure. Well, it's all really simple. It's simple stuff, but then like you just end up having the confidence to sort of lean into simple things when you know a little bit more about it. So, for instance, director, you have conversations with the people you're working with. You might decide how long you're going to work, when you're going to work, how the relationship is going to work. So I'll give you actually an example of a challenge we had that might illuminate this. But I believe in being very intentional about like all those kinds of boundaries, right? The idea of the sort of like, a genius director who's just like there screaming and like everyone's miserable and then, beautiful art comes out. That sometimes exists, but I don't think it actually is, it's not worth it. So Heidi is working on this because she's a writer, she's a playwright, and she's a very, very experienced actress. She's both. But as she was working on it, she would work on the script because it's scripted and then it's mobile, changeable. And then her writer brain would be like, "Oh, I hate this," and would stop and like, and then she'd start acting again and she'd do it and she'd hear it and she'd be like, "Oh, I hate it." She'd sort of like there writing. And so one big realization we came to is I was like, you gotta put the script down, right? You know these stories, but like writer Heidi can't be up there with actor Heidi. You just have to trust it's there, whether it comes out in the exact right way. We're gonna set a new boundary where normally, as a director working with a play, you would say, yeah, let's work on the script, let's learn the lines, let's do, the script is your, fundamental document. And instead saying, okay, we're gonna change the rule, no script. You can study it before, but when we're in here in the room, I just want to hear you speak because what comes out of you, and immediately it just made it possible to, and that was like, example of a rule change. The other big thing I'll say, we work with two young women, and they're both young women of color, and there's an immense responsibility when you start bringing young people into a room where there's like a really inherent like power structure in just how it works, the director, the writer, the script, the whole thing is just a big power structure. And so we've really, really tried to sort of be very intentional about how the power structure in the room works and not sort of lean into the sort of like actor, playwright sort of structure in it, and actually just create a place where young people have a lot more agency than they do anywhere else out in the world, or tend to have out in the world. So that was like a very big, and it's not like something that's like done and we like figured it all out, but like there is a very, very special thing that we have in the room that I realize when new people come into our room, we have to be really intentional about sitting them down and saying, okay, here's the deal. We don't contradict them. They're our experts, right? When they say something, they mean it. So, and what I've learned is that like that, as a way of just interacting in the room and with each other, ends up being something that you have to set as a rule when you're, I think, working with anybody, but like, especially with young people, How much more time do I have? Are we there? Is the show over? Yeah, I don't know what else. Yeah, sure.
What's the biggest difference between working here versus
Every show is so different that it's sort of hard to parse the difference between New York and here. I like the community feeling here. New York has a great feeling too. People talk to each other, and people are sort of very direct. And I feel connected to a community there as well. Here, people are a little bit more sort of relaxed about things. There's a little bit less sort of the edge and stress and sort of the everyday interaction. Hugely professional. This is one of the biggest, if not like the biggest